Mr. Jobarteh, let me begin by asking you about the ultimatum, 37-day ultimatum you've given the government to provide a comprehensive list of the Jammeh properties, how they were sold. How far have you gone with the government on the ultimatum?
Well, no, that wasn't necessarily an ultimatum. They, the access to information law requires that the public institution responds within 21 days. So we had submitted a request for information, um, 35 days, actually, 35 or 34 days ago. So they've not even acknowledged the letter, much more respond to our request to say the information is either available or not available. Um, so right now, what we are considering a number of things. We can report the matter to the Information Commission. Um, you know, because they're the custodian of the law. Alternatively, we can seek legal action against the Minister of Justice, or to undertake other naming and shaming, measures. So we're considering a lot of things, either one of them or a combination of all of them or some of them.
Um, Madi, where were you during the gala protest? Maybe a lot of people would have linked you to the gala protest because you've been on this onslaught from day one. You've never given the government a breathing space. You've always been hitting them hard where it matters. So where were you during the gala protest?
Yeah, I was in town actually. I was in the Netherlands, and but of course I was keenly following the situation on the ground, and I know most or probably all of the gala members or leadership at different levels. So, but I guess like most Gambians, we just got to know about the protests a day or two when they made announcements. At first, I was a bit, uh, you know, worried. I was like, oh, why would these people want to do a protest just the next day? Because I was thinking there needs some serious mobilization for this. But also, I said to myself, well, maybe it doesn't matter because also in the Gambia, we are very bad with protests. People don't see protests as anything meaningful or seriously meaningful. So even if you want to mobilize, it raises the question whether you will still have the numbers. So probably a spontaneous one like this maybe makes more sense, and apparently that seems to have been the case. And so, I was following keenly, and so to the best of my ability, I want to also participate, even though I am far away. And one of the ways I think I could participate is to, take to social media to share information, and provide analysis. And, because I'm part of an organization, also the Edward Francis Moore Center, to also monitor and, respond to the situation as it arises. So we've been also trying to control the narrative, knowing very well how the government itself was trying to control the narrative, to discredit, to threaten, to disinform and, to mislead people. So in such situations, it's important you have other voices to clear the air and respond to such false narratives that governments normally do.
Were you surprised that the police initially denied the gala protesters permit to protest?
Not at all. I mean, I expected it, that they would deny. I mean, that has been their practice. I think what we've seen since 2017 is that the government still, that practice culture is still there, not wanting citizens to exercise their fundamental rights and freedoms. So they have approached protests in a very interesting way. I mean, so they, um, you know, half of the time they give permit, but then the permit comes with conditions that are intended to effectively undermine, weaken the protest. So one day would either send you to the bush, we recall the 3 years Jotna protest and the protest about, issues around National Assembly where they would send you to Sting Corner or to Bond Road. And then they will make restrictions in terms of, who would go and submit the letter, and they will restrict that to normally 5 people. Number two, they will send you to some small street, back street, let's say Westfield, they will send you by the road, cooperative, or the road, small road, by the church. Number three, they will limit you to 2 hours, usually 2 hours, at most 3 hours. And number four, they will limit the distance so that even if they allow you to protest on Caraba Avenue, it will be something like from the post office to Westfield, So these are tactics they've been doing, not to forget that they would also normally grant you the permit, um, 24 hours to the protest, at most 48 hours, but usually 24 hours, 36 hours, So all these are actions that have the tendency, the potential to undermine a protest. And all because they just don't want people to exercise their freedom of assembly. And so this has been the practice. So the rest of it, they will just deny and then either give no reason whatsoever or then claim some security concern, which wouldn't make any sense anyway. So what it just shows is that um, 7 years or 9 years after the dictatorship, there is no commitment to democracy by the government. I think what is apparent is that it is citizens who want democracy, who are agitating and standing and defending democracy. But the government is not reciprocating, acting, with commitment, with willingness to see that democracy prevails in this country. And so, where they can limit it to the greatest extent possible, they do so. Where they can, they will give in. It's all with conditions. So this is why 9 years, 10 years now after the fall of the dictatorship, the quality of governance, the quality of democracy remains very weak. You know.
Mari, were you surprised about the Gala protest? The fact that Yahya Jammeh once claimed that his name will not be forgotten in the next 1,000 years. Now, 9 years after his ouster, Gambian seems to be tilting towards his direction. It's like, is it a pro-Jammeh upsurge in terms of support and popularity? Wanting him to come back and rule the country because the current government is weak in so many aspects?
No, far from it. I don't think there's any support, approval of Jammeh, returning to lead this country again. I think there's still a lot of resentment and anger at Jammeh and the dictatorship. So what we are just seeing is two parts. One is the failure of this government to really undertake the system change that it had promised since 2016. When you look at Barrow's manifesto in 2016 and the coalition MOU, you would see how they have, listed action points in terms of legal, institutional, and constitutional reforms that they would do. This public order act, for example, that they have said that within 6 months of coming to office, they will, review the public order act to change it as it is. They've said so many things. Diaspora voting, they said it will take place. So, but they have abandoned all of those commitments that they took in 2016, in trying to get the vote. So, and then of course, all of the corruption, the inefficiency across government, and the recklessness, the carelessness that is rampant in the government. So yeah, which is translating into all of the hardships people are facing: high cost of living, poor services, high unemployment, deprivation in general. So that frustration is there, and sometimes you will hear people make comments when Jammeh was here, this wasn't happening, or Jammeh would have done this, and so on. Let's say security issues. I think those are coming out of frustration. Not that people are really thinking deeply about it, or they want Jammeh to come back. So I've had folks, conversation with people. I said, for example, when it's security, I said, it's not that Jammeh was during Jammeh's days there was better security in the Gambia. I told them that in the cases of murders, armed robberies across the country were very rampant. We can recall the Operation Bulldozer, for example. And I remember even 2012 when the 9 inmates were killed in the at mile two. One of the justifications Jammeh gave was because of the high rate of murders in town. So it wasn't necessarily better, but then where you have the sitting government feels so much. Yeah, sometimes people out of frustration can recall the past. All right, but then Jammeh's claim also is unfounded. I'm not sure about 1,000 years maybe, but then for a long time I think Gambians cannot ignore the issue of Jammeh. One, because of, as I just said, the nature of this government, the way they are dealing with things. Until now, we are dealing with transitional justice. Basic things, reforms cannot be done. But the fact is, having ruled this country for so long with so much crime is part of our history. Just like the Germans have not forgotten about Hitler. And I'm sure the Ugandans have not forgotten about the Cambodians have not forgotten about Pol Pot and dictators like that. So, and in our case, we just had 3 presidents. It's Jawara, Jammeh, and now Barrow. So we certainly cannot forget Jammeh. Just like we can't forget Jawara. So it's good or bad. We can't forget Jammeh or Jawara, and it's just 10 years. So Jammeh's case would still live with us. That's like Jawara's case has lived with us when he left power 30 years ago. Um, we still talk about Jawara, and in fact, looks like a resurgence of Jawara, kind of euphoria is building now. So we can't forget Jammeh, but not because he was a great person, a good president, or we miss him. It is in recognition of his misrule, really. That is why we can't forget him.
Madi, you spoke about the coalition failure in 2016 to, in other words, renege on their promise for a number of reforms. Now, 2026 is at the corner. There is a lot of talk about coalition behind closed doors. Recently, Mama Kande's audio about whether if Barrow were to invite him, he will surely respond to him, but now it's about a matter of principle whether they will come to terms to form a merger or coalition. Um, and Ismaila Cisse, Dr. Ismaila Cisse also has also come out or made a commitment on West Coast Radio that if anyone were to debate him, he will regret it. The individual will regret it. So if there were to be a point where you have an argument or a debate with any of these coalition leaders or about a potential coalition in 2026, what will be your standpoint?
Well, I don't think Barrow should stand for 2026 presidential election. Um, I think my position is that no one should serve as president of this country for more than 2 terms, whether consecutively or 5 years and then another 5 years later. But in any case, no Gambian should serve for president for more than 10 years. And so for me, 2026 would be 10 years Barrow has been president. So I call on him to step down, not to contest the election. And number two, given his misrule, of the country, the plunder of the resources, the opportunities of the country, the bad governance that prevails, I think the country has enough of NPP I think any further, um, you know, continuation of NPP would be a severe, I mean, destruction essentially of the Gambia in various ways. I think the NPP government, Barrow, beyond everything, they have not demonstrated any sense of urgency, of responsibility, of care for this country. And so I think for me, this government has, I mean, done what they could do. Don't have the ideas anymore. They don't have the commitment, the willingness, the passion for this country. And so I think all governments will ensure that the Mr. Barrow and the NPP as a political party should get out of government. And we have a new government, new sort of people. So I wouldn't advise anyone to form an alliance with Barrow to prolong his rule. But I hope all the opposition would come together to make sure we bring change. I think we are at a situation just like in 2016 where the country faces an existential threat, and it is necessary that there is change because of the political leadership at the helm don't have the willingness, the commitment, the passion, and the honesty to run this country. So that's how I see the Barrow leadership and the NPP, as a party, um, which should not be in government anymore. So, but yeah, to get them out would require our political parties to come together, and and I hope all our political parties understand that and make all the necessary sacrifices and compromises to ensure that we bring about change in 2026 to salvage the country.
So what are the chances for the for any coalition government to flush the NPP out of power? What are the chances in your perspective?
Well, it's 50-50, because to remove an incumbent is always a challenge. Not just in the Ghana, but in any democracy, and especially an incumbent that has no regard for rule of law, for ethics, and will do anything to secure, to a win to entrench themselves in power. So that is a big challenge. With a population that is also in a socio-political environment or framework that actually is not helpful. The poverty, the polarization, the tribalism, the lack of political awareness. All of these can favor an incumbent just as the opposition. So the opposition, I think the background, is not very healthy. Given 2016, the coalition, and 2017 when they took over, all of the rancor and that took place between them, does not all augur well, because a lot of trust has been lost, and so it's going to be a tough work to really bring all of these different parties back again. So in the absence of that, in the country where is forced past the post, then it's very much in favor of the incumbent, if there's no coalition. But even if there's a coalition, it is huge work to really mobilize and so on. So when I look at all the factors, it's 50-50, and which is not very pleasant. But that's how I see it.
So you mean 50-50 chances of defeating Barrow in 2026?
Yes, or Barrow win in 2026.
Okay. When you look at the opposition, like you identified tribalism as some of the major challenges confronting Gambian politics, how do you see it being something that will be transported for the electorate to like a kind of a campaign, moment for the coalition or any opposition or the government, that is the NPP, to use that as a rallying cry to galvanize the electorate?
Yeah, so we've seen NPP in the 2021 elections, for example. One of the last rallies before the election, the vote, when the mobile force made the remark about other ethnic groups, what would happen to them if UDP wins or if Senator Dabo wins, and that had effect, that had impact, and I was in the election observation business at the time, and one of then I used to work with Westminster Foundation for Democracy, and we were focusing on the observing the elections, focusing on diversity and inclusion, to look at voters, in terms of women, persons with disabilities, ethnic minorities, religious minorities, and how they all play out in the election and the issues. And Ibrahim, not just the Gambia, also tribalism, ethnicity, racism is a factor, in any society, and especially when it comes to elections, to decide, because elections is not just about resources, I mean, services or opportunities, or, and so on. It's also about security, it's about certainty, it's about hope, it's about the future. And so everyone wants to see that the election, captures that element of yours. So, if one is any ethnic group in the Gambia, you have concerns, and so and we shouldn't downplay that. And I think it's a genuine concern. If you are a Mandinka or a Fula or a Jola or Sarahule and Aku, there are some things that would concern you because of your ethnicity, because of your even the region you come from, I mean, whether it's about even mining in my region, it is a matter, it's a subject in the elections, an issue in the election. If I Fuller, you have cattle, it's a matter for you that, that's my issue. If I have Mandinka, land issue, it's a matter for me. If I am from Fonyi or from Combo, I mean, I can't ignore the fact that that is an issue for me. And it has to do with my identity, either as a Kombonka or a Mandinka, or, if I am Manjago, it's an issue for you. I mean, you've seen the issues in the Combo in terms of land, settlers and original, indigenes of the place, those kinds of disputes, and so on. So, one, I think Gambians got to understand tribalism or tribe, not to say tribalism, but tribe or religion or region are not necessarily negative. I mean, people have concerns. If you are, a Christian, it's a concern. Just as a Muslim, I mean, we saw the constitution when it came about. As a Muslim, some people are concerned about secularity not to be there, because in their view it undermines Islam. But Christians feel secularity has to be there because it is about the protection of their right to religion. And so these are real things that people have to. These are the issues that will come out in election. So when we observed the election in 2021, I remember talking to three different people as part of observation. A Jola, I forgot the occupation, but a Jola lady who is a single mother selling wires at the roadside. A Wolof who is a fitter, in what we normally call fitter garas, in Bakau, and a fuller civil servant. And we've had separate conversations with these people, they just random picking them. And one theme that came right through all of them is that they are not going to vote for UDP because they feel when UDP wins, they will be kicked out of the country. Because that's a narrative that NPP has, sung at the time. And of course, in the conversation, to try to interrogate that issue, we all concluded that no, but in actual fact, that cannot happen, you know. But um, anyone who's an analyst, you can ignore that because also election and politics are sort of perception, So I may sit here and maybe because I'm an income and a majority group, um, my fears would not necessarily be fears that, be the same fears as a Manjago. If I'm Muslim in the Gambia, what may concern you, or the fears of a Christian, you may not share those fears. But if a Christian says, well, they want to kick us out of this country, most Muslims say, no, I mean, how can you say that? But simply because you are just not a Christian, So people have to understand the circumstances, of each other so that we know what are the issues and but also what prepares them. So that I think what has happened in 2021, and I think which will continue, would be this element of creating fear and discomfort and and doubt in groups because of their identity. So that even when Barrow goes to somewhere in, I think it was Kia was saying, all these Mandinka places, they don't vote for me. That in itself also creates another narrative, another action, because then it puts pressure on those Mandingas probably to say, well, maybe we should vote for the president now. I mean, maybe they may feel embarrassed or they may feel somehow. Um, tribalism, religion, region, and other issues are all key factors, and I think those would be played hugely. And as I said, NPP has been playing this game very well. I mean, we've seen Barrow invite all sorts of ethnic groups to State House, so that you wonder, okay, but again, why would you invite groups in terms of their ethnicity to State House? Should we just not invite Gambians and maybe instead of focusing on tribe or religion, can we focus on our Gambianness and to look at the issues of education, of healthcare, of security, and of employment and so on? They're really looking at things in terms of, okay, what do this group want? And so instead of he said, let's invite the fullest, but what is the issue? It's about the cattle. So can we deal with that instead of bringing the Mandinkas? What is our rice fields? Okay, can we deal with the issue of farming and agriculture and getting seeds and I mean facilities, services, implements for agriculture? So that we don't get to focus on the ethnic group, but then we focus on the things that to deal with the economy, the society, life, and so on. So, but yeah, I think it will be an issue that will come up as we move on.
Yeah, I think when it comes to tribalism, the opposition leaders and all the political players here are culpable, in my perspective, because
Absolutely.
Ahmad Ba, formerly when he was active with the NRP, used to say in Fula, Nedoko Bandu, meaning bloodlines, that you have to support me because I belong to a tribe. Dabo
Yeah.
also in 2021 during the campaign period was
Mm.
also in a very angry tone in Sarawale communities where he was telling them that they were voting for the NPP candidate then how to call it the incumbent president Adama Barrow. So all the
Mhm.
opposition leaders or all the political players belong to tribes, and in their comfort zone, what they say there is usually not exposed to some of us outside. So it's like
Yeah.
people are
Mm.
very comfortable in their comfort zone to explain to their tribesmen, this is me. I owe you, you owe me votes. Put me there so
Yeah.
that I can improve your conditions of service.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, which you can extend to the generality of Gambians, you and me at home in our circles. I mean, of course, we know the stereotypes exist. What the Mandinkas would say about the Fullers would say about the Mandinkas, the Wolof, and so on. That is that. But also, we go beyond that also to say things that I have encountered in my family, in my close quarters, I mean, circles, and I would correct, no, this is tribalist talk. And Yeah, but beyond and above that, yeah, I think all the political parties, of course, all the political parties would say they don't like tribalism. They will condemn it, all the political leaders, all the, and even the parties. But then we've got leaders also say these things, like you just explained. I remember Adiyam Seka, UDP, I think must be somewhere in Sami or Nyani,
Mhm.
and making reference to, Bania, Fasa, and so on. I mean, I remember writing an article to say UDP should, I don't know, expel or, I mean, discipline her in some way. I mean, because that's kind of talk is not what we expect. Um, yeah, so I've had all the party leaders say yes, we condemn this tribalism, but then here party supporters express these things all the time, publicly, in fact. But then no party, I don't know, I've not had any party say we have, because of this party member or supporters' remarks, we hereby expel you out of our party because you are perpetuating tribalism. And so for me, until I see that, I don't trust that the parties don't, they don't, they dislike tribalism. I think they are all using it until I see proper action. So it's not enough to say, because on top of my head, I've seen Barrow speak against tribalism. Ahmad Ba speak against tribalism. My Fati, Dabo, Halifa Salah, and so on. But you also see a tribal talk from people who claim to be supporters of these parties. So that even if that person is not a tribal, I mean, it's not a card carrying member, executive member, but some, Madi Jobarteh over there, who maybe even nobody knows. But for me, the fact that I speak in the name of a party and it's tribalist talk, I would expect that party to come to say, look, we had Madi. I mean, if he's a member of our party, we hereby expel him, or we demand that he apologizes, withdraws his comment, otherwise we will get him out. So for me, when I see political parties start to speak like that, okay, I know now we are serious. But I mean, unfortunately, I don't think that has happened yet.
Let's now move the talk to the issue of the oil. Jammeh is controlling the narrative from exile. He has been making on and off audios, and this one is about our oil in the country. The government said or claimed that we are not yet successful in our oil exploration. What is your standpoint or your position on this oil prospecting? Remember, Jammeh made this proclamation in 2003. Since then, nothing successful has been done in terms of reaching to the level where Nigeria is or where Ghana is, and even present moment Senegal.
Yeah, so I think in general, government has not been providing us one, adequate information, and two, addressing this petroleum issue in a serious way. Um, because Jammeh said what he said. I don't, like take what he said, because as you said, in 2005, he said he was going to make a
2003.
national address. Yeah, he was going to make a national address and held a CD to say Alhamdulillah project and said all those things. Now, he didn't come to tell us in full what actually is in that CD and where we were. And until you now left power, 10 years later, you are telling us all of these stories. I think we should just not listen to him. But the fact remains that we have a minister of petroleum, and we've had news of petroleum companies coming to the Gambia and then going away. Even fighting with government in court and things being settled. And we've had information about oil blocks, A1, 2, up to 6. Um, and other expert opinions are coming to say we have millions and even billions of oil reserves. You know, so how could it be that that could be the case? And like you said, Senegal, more or less around the same time, and now they are at another level. And anywhere there is oil, I mean, it's the same thing. There is oil, there are deposits, there are reserves, and they just go ahead and do what they need to do and take it out. So is government saying there is zero reserves, deposits, and that they cannot make any agreement with any oil company? So I think the government is not giving us the full information, and they are not exercising, I mean, their functions, performing as they should, so that we move to another level, you know. So, which is for me is very disappointing and very frustrating. I mean, um, yeah. So I think Gambia should just demand that the government is more transparent, and efficient in dealing with this matter.
So, what about the claim that Senegal's oil belonged to Gambia? That also was something that Jammeh pushed to further his narrative.
Yeah, well, one has to provide evidence, of that. And unfortunately, Jammeh hasn't provided any evidence. And we are neighbors. And so I think between neighbors, you can have all sorts of stereotypes and conspiracy theories and all sorts of claims like this. And I think we shouldn't be that irresponsible to carry that and run with it that Senegal is, stealing our oil. That could be dangerous. I think that was a very irresponsible thing for Jammeh to say as a former president who had the honor to lead this country for 22 years. I think, much as he, has been removed from the presidency, he has a responsibility to the Gambia. And so instead of going down there publicly making these wild claims, if you have that information, this is your country, you should not allow anyone to steal it, and you claim to love this country, give the information to the Gambia government, to relevant authorities to say, look, this is it. And, so that they take it up. And then to sit there and make this claim, and so suppose he is right, so it means he's just watching Senegal take our oil. What kind of citizen is he? So for me, I don't take what Jammeh said, and and I would advise that we just don't carry it and run with it, because what if he's wrong also? I think it can only bring bad blood between Gambia and Senegal, and we've seen nations go to war over borders, over resources like this, and I don't think we can afford a war with Senegal over for any reason. So I think his comments are very irresponsible, honestly.
Madi, let's move on to your career. You once worked for GRTS upon your completion of your studies in Ghana, and you left work for non-government organizations, and now you're working as a human rights activist. At some point, you were with the Westminster Foundation. You resigned due to principal reasons, which a lot of people did not understand at that time. So, I mean, what does it mean? How do you see the way the media is playing out in the country democratization process, setting the agenda after the Republic's expose on what many Gambians did not know transpired regarding Jammeh's looted assets? Hello?
And growing, because I have noticed a number of media houses, whether radio, television, particularly our online television, and our newspapers, trying to set the agenda. I've noticed a number of prime time, programming, um, conversations on current affairs, in which they bring experts, professionals, officials, activists, and all sorts of people. And when issues emerge, they pick up those issues and generate conversation. So I think by and large the media is doing very well, and now with the emergence of investigative journalism, well, maybe emergence, because I think investigative journalism goes back decades in this country, since the time of Dixon Coley, Traore, Tixmane, and Data played that role. Samsar, I mean, the Foraya, they all played those things. Even the Independent at the time, So I think what we see now public with Malagan and a lot more. Yeah, so I think by and large, I would say the media is on course in terms of setting the agenda, influencing opinions, and stakeholders, holding the state to account. Yes, I think if anything that is impeding the media or still limiting its ability to take this another level is one, resources. Um, to have the resources, to have the equipment, to be able to have the equipment, and to make the investment in terms of pursuing these issues, but also in terms of skills and capacity. I think one of the drawbacks of the Jammeh dictatorship is that it sort of stunted our media growth. I tell people, when you look at generations, like you go to Senegal, you will see media practitioners on their television, radio, in the newspapers, who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, consistently in media work over the past 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years. If you compare to the Gambia, you see a big gap between those above 60 and then, those that are today at the front line of the media. You realize that a lot of them are in their 20s and 30s. So that's a huge gap. So that why? Because there was a dictatorship. A lot of media practitioners either had to flee the country, even abandon the practice altogether. A lot of media houses were, forced not to censor themselves, to limit themselves to soft news, sports, and so on during the Jammeh days. So, the kind of analysis you watch on Senegalese TV, for example, or Ghana or Nigeria or even the US, you realize that is still a bit missing in the Gambia. A lot of the people making, with the big voice in the Gambian media today, you realize they just been in the media 10 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, not more than that generally. When I look across the spectrum, I mean, the personalities I see, but with a lot of commitment. And, I was telling somebody when the late Fatu Samba, may also rest in peace, died. I said, we all came to celebrate Fatu Samba, but when you look at it, how long has she been in the media? It's probably 10 years at most, or not more than 15 years anyway. I mean, that is a very short period. And he's become a national celebrity at that age as well. Now, if you're in the US or Senegal, you can be that age and become a prominent media personality. You know, so it just tells you qualitatively how our industries in the Gambia are still weak, because of the dictatorship. But that notwithstanding, you see in the media, I've been in a number of media houses, and I follow, and whether it's Kirfatu or Fatu Network or iAfrica or Star FM or King FM, I guess, yeah, and others, and all the folks down there are young people generally, but you realize the willingness, the urge, the commitment to deal with these issues. And if a very close observer, you realize, okay, uh, it's one thing to be in the media, but it's also another thing to have that solid maturity, that solid culture, which comes with time, with mentors, I mean, so who do we have here today? When we look at the media, we can say Pap Sen, we can say Peter Gomez, we can say Sam Sarr. I mean, who else? you know. So, there's a big gap. If you go to Senegal, you can count a lot more. I mean, of course, they have a bigger population, but because they have a consistent path, and environment, as opposed to our 22 years that, sort of, blocked everything. And so it killed so many, talents and so on. People like you, imagine if you all stayed at GRTS. I mean, and today you look at GRTS, you see something has been missing. And it's because, people like you, the ones you replace, I mean, or you found they are no more there. And that is simply because of the dictatorship. So it really affected the growth of the media. But as I said, it's coming up. And so not just the media, but also it affected all other sectors of society. Let's say civil society, as well. So when you look at the civil society, when I go to Senegal or Ghana in those days, I don't meet my age mates in Senegal. When during the dictatorship, when I go there, Aleuntine, I know Amakodu Diouf, I mean, Jaja Nyas, I mean, no, Nyas, this guy Rado, Prof. Ndongo, I mean, Ahmad Dansoko. They are not my generation, so, but in the Gambia, you realize that generation doesn't exist. So even myself, if one considers me a civil society leader, if I go to Senegal, I would be at mid-level. And the reason for that is simply because of the dictatorship. So that at my level and the next batch of civil society actors, when you look at the gala, for example, they are like my children. I mean, Omar, I mean, they are in the same class with my daughter. I mean, all those a lot of those folks down there, and across our civil society, who have these big positions, executive director. All right. So it just shows you how our development has been stunted by the dictatorship. So that there wasn't that continuous progression of the industry, of civil society, of the media. And I was telling someone, even music, at the end of the day, you go to Senegal, you can count from Yusundur, you can look at Uza and Ismail Allo, all right, and we'll see uh, layers, after layers coming down until the new ones that I don't even know. I mean, young musicians today. Now, if you look at the Gambia, who do you look at, in terms of Yusundur? It would be somebody like, say, Jaliba Krate, who's active today. I mean, but the gap between Jalba Krate and the ones they call ST and Jizul attack, you realize the gap is too wide. So our music itself hasn't really developed, grown the way Senegal has or other countries, and that's all part of um, the dictatorship, the experience we went through, and so Ibrahim, that's one of the reasons why I also engage in the way I engage, because I see a huge generational gap, and that gap is about experience, it's about expertise, it's about skills, it's about knowledge. It's about strategies and tactics. So, so part of the reason or the things I do is to say, how do we, just say in the streets of our society, I see a lot of young people with a lot of passion, a lot of passion. They are angry, they are frustrated, but it is not just the gala go and protest. Let's have a strategy, you know. So when the Republic, for example, came out, how did the civil society respond? It shows you the lack of experience, expertise, because when journalists do their work, they just report. Some people need to take that report to another level. All right. Now, in the Gambia, when the Republic or Mustafa, this was the first kind of serious report they've done. I mean, he was at Malagan. It was their report that took Bamba Banja, the former PS, to court. But where does the civil society take their reporting to the government? Do we carry it to the National Assembly? Do we carry it out in the streets? So it was great the young people took it up to the streets, because that's what investigative journalists, when they do this kind of work, that's how citizens take it up to another level.
Madi, I was going to
you
comment
know.
here just
But in
seconds.
our case, that is not the case.
Yeah, I was going.
And this is why maybe you may have noticed. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to come in here just for a few seconds. When you talk about the media, I like the comparison you gave Senegal, America, and even Nigeria, because most of the time you see presenters who are in their late 50s, 60s, or even 70s.
Yeah.
But don't you think resource mobilization and also funding from
No,
parastatal?
Nigeria is huge.
Yes. Yeah, what do you think is responsible for this? Because in the Gambia we have a problem of funding resources. So most of those experts you call in will be difficult for them to be given a very mega salary when other institutions giving them a lucrative job offer. So it will be difficult to retain them. So this is the point that I wanted to interject here when you are making your case.
Well, mm, yeah. Mm. Yeah, I mean, it is not primarily because of the resources, like, yeah, remuneration. It doesn't follow that in Senegal or Nigeria, there is huge remuneration or incentive. I think for any industry, there is need for stability and continuity, you know, in order to build expertise and knowledge and skills and experience, and have wisdom in the trade. So for us, the dictatorship denied us that stability and continuity. It brought breakages and so which means we more or less have to go back and start again. 2017, when the change happened, I met a lot of media houses. I see, online now with, new technology, online, so many online television and radio stations in the country. I mean, and I've been approached by so many people being interviewed. And there are so many. But then the people who come to interview me, they're in their 20s, early 20s. And I asked, so when did you start this? Last year, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. Where did you study? When I finished school, grade 12, I came to do this. And what is your position? I'm a producer, I'm the editor in chief, you know, I'm the, senior reporter. Um, you appreciate it, like, yeah, this is it. But then when you look at it, when you know the trade, this person is not somebody to be a producer. If you know what a producer is
Mm,
in a radio station, a television station,
mm,
if you know what an editor in chief is. So what that shows you is, because there's nobody, and this trade has to go on.
mm.
So these young people all of a sudden saw themselves holding a camera, and I'm the senior cameraman, I'm the, lighting,
Direct.
and do they know what this means? Who is mentoring them? Who is training them? Yeah. So that is our problem, because resources is a continuous thing. You will always continue to look for resources. CNN is still looking for resources. Al Jazeera is still looking for resources. BBC is still looking for resources. Yeah. But for us, the primary problem we have is that there was no stability and continuity. So we are more or less starting afresh, and so newsroom organization, and organizing a whole media organization, media house. These are all, experiences, expertise. and filming, interviewing. These are things not, it's just more than just sitting before someone and asking a question. All right, but this. The journalists, the amount of preparation journalists would do, on the subject, on the issue, but also on the person that they are going to interview and so on. So you have the young people interview me, and and I see it because I had the benefit of being a journalist myself at one point, so I really see the gap, you know. But I admire their passion, their commitment, and I know it's simply because of our background, of our history, which is the reason for this. And so we need time. They need a lot of hard work, though, but also it will take time for us to build to nurture that kind of cultures, media culture as we have in Senegal or Ghana or Nigeria and somewhere else. It's pretty interesting. Yeah.
So what are the prospects for Gambia, politically, media-wise, institutional development? Can you hear me, Madi? Hello? Madi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I said, what are the
No,
prospects for
I
Gambia?
can hear you. Yeah. Um. Yeah. Good question, but complex and heavy question. What are the prospects? Um. You know, in some sense, probably we start from the concerns, the challenges. Um, I think we've missed a huge opportunity from 2017. I think coming towards 2017, in 2016, when the coalition was formed, I think there was clarity as to what we need to do, where we need to go. The goodwill was there at the local level, at the international level, and the opportunities were there. And I think it's a big misfortune. We sort of plundered a lot of the opportunities, and missed a lot of the opportunities. And you know, instead of cooperating, we became antagonistic. Um, so that today we have what we have. So that what we have today, in terms of prospects, it's really concerning. Because as I said, for me, we have a regime that has no sense of responsibility and commitment or passion to transform this country. But on the other hand, too, I see, in the opposition generally, that lack of urgency, which is equally concerning, not just in the opposition, but even in the civil society. Um, I see that, lack of or limited sense of urgency, um, so that it raises the question, really, what could potentially happen. So, so if there are any prospects, is of course, we are part of this world. We've had an experience, to learn from. We have a proliferation of media and civil society organizations and political parties, and we have a space, an open space, as compared to last time, and so that offers us opportunity, prospects to salvage ourselves. But then, of course, it's about who is playing in that field, and the political parties, the media, the civil society, the government itself, our development partners. Is there any real sense of urgency? I don't see that across the board. I don't see a society that gets outraged because of the injustice or the malpractices, the abuses, and so on. And for me, a society that doesn't get outraged, I don't think they will get anything right. So, for me, I think we are at a crossroads. I mean, 2016 will determine a lot, and I hope everyone will sit back and take a deep breath and plunge into huge reflection, to realize the existential threat we face if this current dispensation continues. Yes, and do we have the ability to understand that? Do we have the ability to, stand somewhere to change that? So these are issues that, for me, surround the idea of prospects. What are the prospects for this country? Yeah. So the bottom line for me is that there's sort of anxiety. I mean, uncertainty. Yeah, there's sort of uncertainty.
Finally, Madi, is there anything else that you would like to say regarding the future for the Gambia to add more onto what you said politically, institutionally, and um, internationally? You think, for instance, in 2026, Barrow is going to go, maybe UDP is going to be in power, or maybe GDC or a coalition government again in 2026?
Well, as I said, this is a 50-50 thing. I mean, in one sense, a lot of the stakes or the odds are in Barrow's favor as the incumbent, and and because of that, um, he, he has a lot of factors. For example, building roads and schools and hospitals, and electricity, for example, have reached areas of the country that it has never reached. And those are the reasons people elect government. So, regardless of the quality or the cost of it to us, and all the corruption surrounding all of those things, at the end of the day, I think people in Basse are glad that there's a bridge, and so what is behind the bridge and all of that, it doesn't matter to people. Um, so when you look at those things, those are factors in his favor. All right. But also, as the incumbent, as I said, will he abide by electoral laws and ethical conduct, not to exploit the incumbency, taking public resources to use, um, for that purpose? So, but if he does, that is also in his favor. And in a country where there's so much poverty and deprivation, and this is a culture that we are used to, because Jammeh, remember, would say, if you don't vote for me, there'll be no development in your area. So I mean, um, so there are a lot of things in his favor. But on the other hand, too, I mean, there are a lot of things in the favor of the opposition, the corruption, the inefficiency, the high cost of living, the unemployment, and so many social economic factors that are in favor of the opposition to utilize. All right. Um, but then a united opposition is favorable to the opposition, but a divided opposition is favorable to Barrow. So one has to look at all of these factors to say, what are in his favor and what are not in his favor, and the same for the opposition. So that's why, for me, it's 50-50 at the end of the day. Yeah, so if the opposition wants to remove him, they definitely would have to do better, creating a coalition. And the more opposition you have in it, the better. In the absence of that, I mean, I think Barrow stands a chance.
Well, on that note, thank you so much, Madi Jobarteh, for talking to us about the trending socio-political issues happening in the Gambia. We wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.